Farm robbers thought they'd hit an easy target, a quiet single-father spread, but they were dead wrong. When his hidden past as a Green Beret sniper collides with their violent present, will anyone make it out alive? The old screen door creaked, just like it always did as I stepped out onto the porch. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, the kind of beautiful sight Lily, my little girl, would try to capture with her crayons later. Usually, a deep quiet would be settling over our farm by now, just the whisper of the wind in the tall corn and the chirping of early crickets. But tonight, something felt off. It wasn't a sound, not yet anyway, more like a hum in the air, a stillness that was too still. I told myself it was just tiredness. Running a farm single-handedly while raising an 8-year-old could wear a man down. Still, a part of me, a part I tried to bury deep, was wide awake listening. Lily was inside, humming a little tune as she finished her homework at the kitchen table. Her bright, happy sound was the most precious thing in my world. After her mom, Sarah, passed, Lily became my everything, the reason I traded my old life for this patch of earth. This farm wasn't just land or house. It was our fresh start, our safe place. I took a slow breath, tasting the cool evening air. The scent of hay and damp soil was usually comforting, but tonight it did little to calm the strange feeling in my gut. I scanned the tree line at the edge of our property. Everything looked normal. The old tractor sat where I'd left it, and the barn door was closed tight. No, wait. Was the gate to the far pasture latched? I thought I'd checked it this morning. Maybe a strong gust of wind. Or maybe not. Papa, can I have a cookie? Lily called, her voice pulling me back from the edge of my thoughts. Just one sweet pea. I called back, forcing a smile into my voice. And then it's almost bath time. I walked the perimeter of the house, my boots crunching softly on the gravel path. It was a habit, this nightly check. Sarah used to tease me about it, saying I was like a mother hen with her chick. She didn't know the half of it, the real reasons I was always so watchful. Some habits, the ones learned in places far away where danger had 1,000 faces, didn't fade easily. They just slept, waiting. Tonight, they felt like they were starting to stir. I saw a faint light flicker deep in the woods, past our property line, then it was gone. Probably just campers, I tried to reassure myself, but the uneasy feeling tightened its grip. It was too quick, too sudden. Back inside, Lily was munching on her cookie, her legs swinging beneath her chair. Papa, Mr. Henderson said he saw a coyote near his chickens again, she said, her brow furrowed with concern for our own small flock. Don't you worry, Lily Bug, I said, ruffling her hair. Our coop is strong, and I'm here. I always made sure the coop was secure, reinforcing it just last spring. It wasn't just coyotes I worried about, though I'd never tell her that. As I helped Lily with her bath, the sounds of splashing water and her giggles almost made me forget the feeling outside. Almost. After tucking her into bed, reading her favorite story about a brave little rabbit, I stood by her window for a long moment, watching her sleep. Her face was so peaceful, so innocent. A fierce wave of love, so strong it almost hurt, washed over me. I would do anything to keep her safe, to protect that innocence. Anything. Downstairs, I made sure the doors were locked, double-checking the latches. The house was quiet, too quiet. The usual comforting silence now felt like it was holding its breath. I sat in the old armchair in the living room, the one Sarah had loved, but I didn't turn on the lamp. I just sat there in the dark, listening. And then I heard it. Not the wind, not an animal. It was the distinct, soft crunch of gravel. Slow, careful. Someone was walking up our long driveway. My heart, which had been thumping a little too fast all evening, now began a steady, heavy beat, like a drum calling soldiers to attention. I moved silently to the window, peering through a tiny gap in the curtains. 3 dark shapes. That's all I could make out in the moonlight. They were moving low and fast, not like lost travelers or friendly neighbors. They were sticking to the shadows, their movements purposeful like hunters. My old training, the instincts I thought were long dormant, snapped into sharp focus. My mind went from farmer to something else, something I hadn't been in years. These weren't kids looking for trouble. Their posture, The way they moved as a unit, even in the poor light. I'd seen it before. They were heading for the barn first, probably thinking it was the easiest target, full of tools and equipment. They didn't know that the most valuable thing on this farm was in the house, sleeping soundly. And they didn't know who was waiting for them. My hand drifted to the old wooden chest I kept tucked away in my bedroom closet. It didn't hold farm tools. It held memories and tools of different kind. The night was no longer just still. It was holding a dangerous secret. It was about to break. The first crunch of their boots on my gravel driveway had been quiet, like they were trying not to be heard. But now, as they got closer to the barn, their steps got a little louder, a little more sure of themselves. My stomach twisted. Lily. I had to make sure Lily was safe. That was the only thing that mattered. My feet didn't make a sound on the wooden stairs as I went up to her room. The moon was shining a little bit through her window, and I could see her small shape under the covers, her teddy bear tucked beside her. She looked so tiny, so peaceful. How could bad people want to come here, to our safe place? Lily Bug, I whispered, gently shaking her shoulder. Wake up, sweetie. Her eyes fluttered open, sleepy and confused. Papa, what's wrong? I said softly, putting a finger to my lips. I need you to be a super quiet mouse for me, okay? We're going to play a hiding game, a really important one. I tried to keep my voice calm and steady, like when we practice fire drills, but inside, my heart was beating like a hummingbird's wings. A game? She whispered back, her eyes wide. The quietest game ever, I said, helping her out of bed. I need you to go into your closet and hide way in the back, under those blankets I put there this afternoon. And don't come out, no matter what you hear, until I come and get you. Can you do that for Papa? I had put an old, thick sleeping bag and a couple of heavy blankets in there earlier, telling her we were making a fort for later. Now it was her hiding spot. She nodded, her little face serious. She knew, even if she didn't understand everything, that this was important. I hugged her tight, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. I love you, Lilybug. Be brave. Love you too, Papa, she whispered, then tiptoed to her closet and disappeared inside, pulling the door almost shut, leaving just a tiny crack. Good girl. Now I could focus. I'll move back to the window in my own room, the one that looked out over the barn and the yard. The three figures were at the barn door now. I could hear the low murmur of their voices, but not what they were saying. One of them was bigger than the others, seemed to be telling them what to do. They weren't using flashlights much, just quick little bursts of light, meaning they had some experience with moving in the dark. Amateurs wouldn't be so careful. They thought they were smart, sneaking around. My mind started to work like it used to, clicking through possibilities, dangers, and what I could do. The old me, the soldier, started to wake up inside. He knew how to watch, how to wait, how to see things other people missed. These men, they probably thought this was just some sleepy farm, an easy place to steal from. They probably saw me as just a tired old farmer. They had no idea what kind of hornet's nest they were poking. I took a deep breath, tried to push down the anger that was starting to bubble up. Anger was no good. Anger made you careless. I needed to be calm. I needed to think. I could see them now trying to pry open the big barn door. It was old, made of thick wood, but the lock was heavy duty. I made sure of that. I heard a metallic screech as one of them used a crowbar. They were making noise now, not caring as much. Maybe they thought no one was home, or that if someone was, they'd be too scared to do anything. The sound of splintering would make me wince. That was Sarah's favorite door. She painted it bright red when we first moved in. More than just tools, they were breaking memories. One of them, the smaller one, kept looking back towards the house like he was nervous. Good. Nerves made people sloppy. The big one finally yanked the door open with a loud groan of wood. They slipped inside the dark barn. For a moment, everything was quiet again, except for the thumping in my own chest. What were they looking for? My tools were decent, but nothing fancy. The old quad bike, it barely ran. It didn't make sense for this much trouble. Then, a light flickered on inside the barn, a powerful flashlight beam dancing around. They were searching, probably looking for anything easy to carry, anything valuable. My mind raced. I had no phone service out here tonight. A storm earlier had knocked out the local tower, and my landline was in the kitchen downstairs. Calling for help wasn't an option right now. It was just me, and the skills I'd prayed I'd never need again. I thought about the layout of the yard, the barn, the house. Where could I go? What could I use? My old hunting rifle was locked up, and getting to it without them seeing or hearing me would be risky. Besides, I didn't want to start shooting if I didn't absolutely have to. That would put Lily in even more danger. There had to be another way. I scanned the yard, the woodpile, the old well cover, the thick bushes along the fence line. Each one was a spot, a piece of puzzle. Suddenly, one of them came back out of the barn. He wasn't carrying anything. He just stood there for a second, looking straight at the house. My breath caught in my throat. Did he see me? I stayed perfectly still, hidden in the shadows of my room. He stretched, then started walking towards the house, his steps slow but sure. He was coming to check the house. The game was changing, and it was about to get a whole lot more dangerous. The quiet house seemed to hold its breath with me. Downstairs, I heard them moving around. It wasn't the loud, smashing sounds from the barn anymore. Now it was quieter, more careful steps. My ears strained to catch everything. They were getting closer to the house. I could feel it. I knew they wouldn't just leave after the barn. People like that, they always wanted more. My hand was steady, but inside my stomach was doing flips. Lily was still asleep. Every quiet second felt like a gift I had to protect. I crept closer to the stairs, listening. I heard a low voice, then another. They were talking, but too low to make out the words clearly. It sounded like they were near the back door. I remembered leaving that old metal footlocker there. It was heavy, made of thick metal with a rusty lock. It looked important, maybe like it held something valuable. I put it there on purpose, a little trap for their eyes. Make them think that's where the good stuff was. It wasn't about tricking them out of loot, not really. It was about buying time, about making them stop and think, just for a moment. Any moment I could steal was a moment Lily was safer. Then a new sound, a scraping, like metal on metal. They were messing with the locker. My heart thumped. Good. They took the bait. I heard grunting, straining. The lock was tough, even rusty. It was meant to keep things safe, even if the things inside weren't gold bars. More scraping, louder this time. They were using something to pry it open. A crowbar, maybe, or that tire iron I heard earlier. The sound went on for a tense minute. Then a sudden, sharp crack. The old lock had given way. Silence again, but a different kind. Not the silence of the empty house, but the silence of people looking at something they didn't expect. I held my breath, listening hard. I could almost feel their eyes on the contents of the locker. What would they see? Just dusty old stuff to them. An old, worn-out book that wasn't really a journal, just blank pages mostly. A small, carved wooden bird Lily had made me. And tucked underneath, carefully wrapped in an old cloth, were a few things from my other life. Not weapons, not anything dangerous, just things that told a story. A faded photo of a group of tired-looking men in dusty clothes, standing in front of a beat-up vehicle. I was in the back, looking younger, harder. A small, heavy metal object, shaped funny, like a bent star, with writing on it I knew they wouldn't understand. And a small, stitched patch, dark green and black, with something written on it too, words that meant everything to me once. Nothing valuable to steal, but everything valuable about who I used to be. A whispered voice, sharp and urgent. Hey, boss, you need to see this. The first hook. My ears strained. They found it. They were looking at the photo, the strange metal thing, the patch. I could almost picture them huddled around the open locker, their faces lit dimly by a phone screen maybe. The silence after that whisper was heavy. They weren't just looking for money or tools anymore. They were looking at my past that I'd worked so hard to bury under layers of farm dirt in quiet days. The air downstairs felt different, thick with their confusion, their growing unease. They thought they were breaking into a farmer's house. Now they were starting to wonder. Another whisper, this one a little shaky. What is this stuff? The second hook. Good. Let them wonder. Let a little bit of fear creep in. Fear makes people make mistakes. Fear makes them hesitant. And hesitation is time. Time for me to think, to plan. I imagine them looking at the photo. Would they recognize the clothes? The way we stood? Probably not. But the patch, the metal object, they were symbols. Symbols of something they weren't ready for. The leader's voice was low, maybe a little less rough than before. I don't know, it looks like army stuff. He sounded unsure. That was key. Uncertainty. I heard the sounds of them shuffling things around in the locker. They weren't just grabbing blindly anymore. They were examining, trying to figure it out. My old life felt like it was creeping out of that box, reaching for them. It wasn't just a past. It was a shadow, a warning. Let them feel the chill of that shadow. I stayed quiet, listening to every scrape, every breath. I heard one of them clear his throat nervously. They weren't laughing anymore. The arrogant sound were gone, replaced by quiet, worried whispers. "This ain't right, boss," another voice mumbled. "This ain't what we came for." The third hook. Yes, exactly. This wasn't just a simple farm robbery. This was something else. Something unknown. And the unknown is always scarier than a locked door or a barking dog. They had stepped into something bigger than they expected. They had stepped into my history. And my history was a dangerous place to be. I felt a cold, hard knot tightening in my stomach. They knew something was different. The game had changed. From a simple break-in, it had turned into a confrontation with a man who had put parts of himself away, but who could still bring them back out when he needed to. I heard the locker lid being closed, not slammed shut in frustration, but closed carefully, almost respectfully, like they were afraid of what else might jump out at them from inside. The whispering continued. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. They were debating. They were scared. Good. My plan was working. The house was still, but the air was buzzing. Every nerve ending in my body was awake, ready. I was a coiled spring, waiting for their next move. Would they cut their losses and run? Or would their fear make them reckless? That was the dangerous part. Fear could make people unpredictable, especially people who already did bad things. I stayed hidden, listening, breathing as quietly as I could. The sound from downstairs were quieter now, but more deliberate. They were moving around the house, not just the back area, checking doors, windows, looking for other ways in, or maybe just checking for threats. They knew I was here now, or at least they knew someone was here who wasn't just a simple farmer. The silence stretched on, tense and thick. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Waiting felt like an eternity. Waiting for the next sound, the next sign of what they would do. The old farmhouse, usually a place of peace and comfort, felt like a battlefield again, just like the dusty places I'd been before. But this time, the stakes were everything. My daughter was sleeping upstairs. That thought was a fire in my belly, keeping me focused, keeping me ready. I wouldn't let them touch her, or this place she called home. The quiet hum of the refrigerator felt incredibly loud in the silence. I listened for footsteps, for voices. They were moving slower now, less confident. The fear was doing its job. But how much fear was enough? And when would they decide fear meant striking first? I stayed frozen in the dark hallway upstairs, high above the back door. My eyes were glued to the narrow gap in the curtains that gave me a view of the small porch and the yard beyond. It was dark outside, only the moon and stars giving any light, plus the faint glow from the nearby town. The intruders were different now. Their big talk from the barn was gone. They moved quieter, slower, like cats sniffing around a new, dangerous place. The one who'd opened the locker kept looking around, his head on a swivel. He was jumpy. The fear had definitely set in with him. He still had that tire iron in his hand, but he wasn't swinging around anymore. He held it tight, like it was the only thing keeping him safe. They were talking in low voices again. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. Nervous, jumpy. They knew they had found something they didn't understand. Something that smelled like trouble. My old life, that quiet part of me I kept locked away, was making them sweat. Good. Let them sweat. Let them think about what they were getting into. Let them wonder if the man who lived here was just a farmer or something else entirely. That uncertainty was a weapon all its own. It made them hesitant. One of them, the jumpy one with the tire iron, started to move away from the house, heading back toward the edge of the yard where their truck must be hidden. He was walking past the old oak tree, the one Lily loved to climb. He wasn't looking at the house anymore, but towards the darkness beyond. Maybe he was thinking about running. Maybe he was just scouting. Either way, he was moving into a spot I had planned for. My breath came out slow and quiet. My body felt strangely calm, like it knew exactly what to do. Years ago, in different dark places, my body had felt like this before. Ready. My hand was wrapped around the heavy wrench I'd grabbed from my toolbox on the way upstairs. It wasn't a gun. I didn't want to shoot them. Not yet. Killing them wouldn't bring Sarah back, and it wouldn't make Lily feel safer in the long run. My goal wasn't to end them, but to stop them, to scare them off, to make them regret the day they decided to come to my farm. The wrench felt heavy and right in my hand. It was a tool, but right now it was going to be a message. A message sent from the darkness. I tracked the jumpy guy with the tire iron as he walked past the oak tree. He was maybe 15 feet from the porch. Close enough. I took a deep breath, held it for a second, then let it out slow. My arm moved, not fast, not jerky, but smooth and controlled. Like I was tossing a ball, but a very heavy, very important ball. The wrench left my hand silently, a dark shape against the slightly less dark night sky. It flew through the air, spinning end over end. I wasn't aiming for him, not directly. I was aiming for the tire iron he was holding so tight. There was a sharp, loud clang. The sound of heavy metal hitting heavy metal echoed in the quiet night. It was louder than I expected. The wrench had hit the tire iron exactly where I wanted it to. The man yelped, a surprised, pained sound. He stumbled back, dropping the tire iron with another clatter as it hit the ground. He grabbed his hand, shaking it, probably stinging like crazy. He looked around wildly, trying to figure out where the noise came from, what had hit him. He couldn't see me up here in the dark window. The other two intruders, closer to the porch, froze. Their heads snapped towards their friend. "What the?" one of them whispered, fear playing in his voice. The leader spun around, squinting into the darkness. They knew I was here now, definitely. They knew I wasn't just hiding. I was doing things. Hitting them, even if it was just a tool hitting a tool. It was an attack from the shadows, from a place they couldn't see. The jumpy guy was still rubbing his hand, looking scared and confused. The tire iron lay on the grass near his feet. This was the second hook, the physical action. The wrench wasn't just a thrown object, it was a statement. Asterisk, I see you. I can reach you. And I'm not defenseless. Asterisk, they were facing someone who wasn't playing by their rules. They were used to people being scared, giving up. They weren't used to someone fighting back in ways they didn't understand. My heart was pounding now, but it wasn't just fear. It was the rush of adrenaline, the feeling of being back in control, even just a little bit. I had taken one of their weapons, and I had put fear in their eyes. 2 more to go. I stayed still, watching them, waiting for their reaction. Would they get angry? Or would they get even more scared? Their next move would tell me everything. The night air felt cool on my skin. I was ready for whatever came next. Ready to protect my home and my daughter. Ready to use whatever I had to. The sounds of the night seemed to have stopped, replaced by the tense silence of 3 scared men and 1 watchful father. 5. The quiet house seemed to hold its breath with me. Downstairs, I heard them moving around. It wasn't the loud, smashing sound from the barn anymore. Now it was quieter, more careful steps. My ears strained to catch everything. They were getting closer to the house. I could feel it. I knew they wouldn't just leave after the barn. People like that, they always wanted more. My hand was steady, but inside, my stomach was doing flips. Lily was still asleep. Every quiet second felt like a gift I had to protect. I crept closer to the stairs, listening. I heard a low voice, then another. They were talking, but too low to make out the words clearly. It sounded like they were near the back door. I remembered leaving that old metal footlocker there. It was heavy, made of thick metal with a rusty lock. It looked important, maybe like it held something valuable. I put it there on purpose, a little trap for their eyes. Make them think that's where the good stuff was. It wasn't about tricking them out of loot, not really. It was about buying time, about making them stop and think, just for a moment. Any moment I could steal was a moment Lily was safer. Then a new sound, a scraping, like metal on metal. They were messing with the locker. My heart thumped. Good. They took the bait. I heard grunting, straining. The lock was tough, even rusty. It was meant to keep things safe, even if the things inside weren't gold bars. More scraping, louder this time. They were using something to pry it open. A crowbar, maybe, or that tire iron I heard earlier. The sound went on for a tense minute, then a sudden, sharp crack. The old lock had given way. Silence again, but a different kind. Not the silence of the empty house, but the silence of people looking at something they didn't expect. I held my breath, listening hard. I could almost feel their eyes on the contents of the locker. What would they see? Just dusty old stuff to them. An old, worn-out book that wasn't really a journal, just blank pages mostly. A small, carved wooden bird Lily had made me. And tucked underneath, carefully wrapped in an old cloth, were a few things from my other life. Not weapons, not anything dangerous, just things that told a story. A faded photo of a group of tired-looking men in dusty clothes, standing in front of a beat-up vehicle. I was in the back, looking younger, harder. A small, heavy metal object, shaped funny, like a bent star, with writing on it I knew they wouldn't understand. And a small, stitched patch, dark green and black, with something written on it too, words that meant everything to me once. Nothing valuable to steal, but everything valuable about who I used to be. A whispered voice, sharp and urgent. "Hey, boss, you need to see this." My ears strained. They found it. They were looking at the photo, the strange metal thing, the patch. I could almost picture them huddled around the open locker, their faces lit dimly by a phone screen maybe. The silence after that whisper was heavy. They weren't just looking for money or tools anymore. They were looking at my past that I'd worked so hard to bury under layers of farm dirt and quiet days. The air downstairs felt different, thick with their confusion, their growing unease. They thought they were breaking into a farmer's house. Now, they were starting to wonder. Another whisper, this one a little shaky. "What is this stuff?" Good. Let them wonder. Let a little bit of fear creep in. Fear makes people make mistakes. Fear makes them hesitant. And hesitation is time. Time for me to think, to plan. I imagine them looking at the photo. Would they recognize the clothes? The way we stood? Probably not. But the patch, the metal object, they were symbols. Symbols of something they weren't ready for. The leader's voice was low, maybe a little less rough than before. "I don't know, it looks like army stuff." He sounded unsure. That was key. Uncertainty. I heard the sounds of them shuffling things around in the locker. They weren't just grabbing blindly anymore. They were examining, trying to figure it out. My old life felt like it was creeping out of that box, reaching for them. It wasn't just a past. It was a shadow, a warning. Let them feel the chill of that shadow. I stayed quiet, listening to every scrape, every breath. I heard one of them clear his throat nervously. They weren't laughing anymore. The arrogant sounds were gone, replaced by quiet, worried whispers. "This ain't right, boss," another voice mumbled. "This ain't what we came for." Yes, exactly. This wasn't just a simple farm robbery. This was something else. Something unknown. And the unknown is always scarier than a locked door or a barking dog. They had stepped into something bigger than they expected. They had stepped into my history. And my history was a dangerous place to be. I felt a cold, hard knot tightening in my stomach. They knew something was different. The game had changed. From a simple break-in, it had turned into a confrontation with a man who had put parts of himself away, but who could still bring them back out when he needed to. I heard the locker lid being closed, not slammed shut in frustration, but closed carefully, almost respectfully, like they were afraid of what else might jump out at them from inside. The whispering continued. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. They were debating. They were scared. Good. My plan was working. The house was still, but the air was buzzing. Every nerve ending my body was awake, ready. I was a coiled spring, waiting for their next move. Would they cut their losses and run? Or would their fear make them reckless? That was the dangerous part. Fear could make people unpredictable, especially people who already did bad things. I stayed hidden, listening, breathing as quietly as I could. The sound from downstairs were quieter now, but more deliberate. They were moving around the house, not just the back area, checking doors, windows, looking for other ways in, or maybe just checking for threats. They knew I was here now, or at least they knew someone was here who wasn't just a simple farmer. The silence stretched on, tense and thick. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Waiting felt like an eternity. Waiting for the next sound, the next sign of what they would do. The old farmhouse, usually a place of peace and comfort, felt like a battlefield again, just like the dusty places I'd been before. But this time, the stakes were everything. My daughter was sleeping upstairs. That thought was a fire in my belly, keeping me focused, keeping me ready. I wouldn't let them touch her, or this place she called home. The quiet hum of the refrigerator felt incredibly loud in the silence. I listened for footsteps, for voices. They were moving slower now, less confident. The fear was doing its job. But how much fear was enough? And when would they decide fear meant striking first? The seconds ticked by, each one heavy. I could hear the grandfather clock in the living room ticking, a slow, steady beat against the frantic pounding of my heart. Tick, tock, waiting, listening. They were near the front of the house now, I thought. I heard a floorboard creak downstairs that wasn't me. They were exploring, casing the joint, they'd call it, looking for weak spots, for anything of value. But they were also looking for me. That was the new part. They weren't just robbers anymore. They were hunters, and I was the prey. But they didn't know that the prey knew the territory better than they ever could. I knew every creak of this old house, every shadow, every hiding spot. This was my ground. This was my home, and I would defend it. I felt a surge of something cold and hard inside me. Not anger, not exactly. Something colder, more controlled. Like a switch had been flipped. The farmer was still here, the father was definitely here, but another part of me, a part one hadn't needed in a long, long time, was starting to wake up. The part that knew how to handle situations like this. The part that knew how to make threats disappear. The part that knew how to use the darkness and the silence to its advantage. They were moving back towards the kitchen now. I could hear the faint sound of their heavy boots on the linoleum floor. They were getting closer to the back door again. Closer to where the locker was, closer to where they had their moment of doubt. Maybe they were going to talk about it again. Maybe they were going to try and figure out what they saw. Or maybe they were just trying to decide if the risk was worth it. I hoped the fear would win. I hoped they would just leave. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Not yet. Not after what they'd seen in that box. That box had changed everything. It had turned a simple robbery into something personal. And that was a dangerous thing for them to have done. I stayed still, a shadow in the shadows, waiting to see what their fear or their greed would make them do next. My eyes didn't leave the dark shapes moving below. Not for a second. 6. I held my breath, watching for my hiding spot. They were jumpy now. Not like before, not like when they were smashing things in the barn. Now, they moved quiet, looking around all the time. The one who found the stuff in the box was still near the back door, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He had that tire iron in his hand, but it looked like he was holding it more for comfort than anything else. He kept glancing towards the dark yard, like he was expecting something to jump out at him. Good. Let him worry. Let him think about things that go bump in the night, especially when the bumps were coming from me. I was upstairs in the narrow hallway that looked down over the back porch through a small, dusty window gap. It wasn't much of a view, but it was enough. Enough to see shapes moving in the dim light. Enough to hear the low sounds of their nervous talking. They were still whispering, arguing maybe, trying to decide what to do. The leader was there too, and the third one. They were closer together now, like scared animals in a pack. My hand was wrapped around the heavy wrench. It was a big one, the kind you use for fixing pipes or heavy machinery. Made of thick, solid metal. It felt good in my hand, heavy and real. Not like a gun. A gun felt cold, distant. This felt solid, grounded. Like the farm. Like the earth under my feet. I wasn't going to shoot them. Not unless I absolutely had to. They were bad men, doing bad things, but they were still men. And I wasn't that man anymore, the one who ended things with a pull of a trigger. I was Lily's dad. That changed everything. But I could still make them stop. I could still make them understand they shouldn't be here. The jumpy one, the one with the tire iron, started to walk away from the porch again. He moved slow, careful, looking back at the house. He walked towards the old oak tree in the yard, the one Sarah and I had planted years ago, the one Lily played under. He stopped near the tree, looking out towards the edge of the property, maybe checking the path back to their truck. He was just in the right spot. I took a slow, deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, dusty air of the old house. My mind felt clear, focused, like everything else in the world had faded away, and there was only this moment, this man, and the wrench in my hand. I raised my arm slowly, quietly. No sudden movements. My body remembered this, even if my mind tried to forget. It remembered how to be silent, how to be precise. With a quiet exhale, I sent the wrench on its way. It wasn't a hard throw, not like I was trying to break something far away. It was a short, strong throw, aimed right at the tire iron he was holding. A message delivery. The wrench spun through the air, a dark shape against the night sky. It flew true. Clang. The sound was loud, sharp, surprising. The wrench hit the tire iron dead on. I heard the man gasp, a sharp intake of breath. He yelled something, a surprised, pained shout. The tire iron flew out of his hand and landed somewhere in the grass with another dull thud. He stumbled back a step or two, grabbing his hand, shaking it hard. It must have stung like fire. He looked around wildly, his eyes wide, even in the dim light. He couldn't see me up here. The other two froze. They spun towards him, their faces pale. "What was that?" one of them yelled. The leader stared at the spot near the oak tree, then up at the house. He knew. He knew it came from inside. From me. The jumpy guy was still shaking his hand, staring at the ground where the tire iron had fallen. He looked terrified. Good. That's what I wanted. Terror. This was the hook. The unexpected physical blow from the unseen. It wasn't a fair fight. Not in the way they thought of fighting. It was something else. Something designed to disorient, to scare, to make them doubt everything they thought they knew. They came expecting an easy target, a farmer with a few valuable things. They found a house that fought back. A man who used the darkness and the silence to his advantage. They were two against one now, but I had the advantage of surprise, of knowing the territory, and of a different kind of readiness. The readiness that comes from having everything to lose. I stayed still, watching them. The leader was talking to the other one in quick, urgent whispers. They were scared. I could feel it from up here. The air felt thick with it. The jumpy guy was backing away from the oak tree, moving closer to the other two. He didn't even try to pick up the tire iron. He just wanted to be near his friends, like little kids in the dark. They were looking up at the house now, trying to see something in the windows. They wouldn't see me. I was part of the darkness, part of the old house. They were standing still, huddled together, looking lost. The earlier confidence was completely gone, replaced by fear and confusion. They didn't know what to do next. That was a good place to have them, stuck between wanting to run and wanting to know what was happening. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. Just watched and waited. Let them stew in their fear for a moment. Let them think about what else might come flying out of the darkness. What else this farmer might have hidden up his sleeve. My hands were steady, no longer trembling. My heart was still beating fast, but it was a strong, steady beat now. The beat of a man ready to protect his home. The leader said something sharp, his voice a little louder this time, but still tight with tension. He pointed towards the front of the house. Maybe they were going to try another way in. Or maybe they were just trying to decide on a plan. They started to move, slowly, carefully, away from the back door, heading around the side of the house towards the front. Three dark shapes, moving cautiously through the moonlit yard. I watched them go, not letting my guard down for a second. They were scared, yes, but scared people could still be dangerous. Sometimes even more dangerous. The jumpy one kept looking back at the oak tree, like the wrench might come flying out again. The leader seemed annoyed, frustrated. This wasn't going like they planned. And that was a good thing for me. I was winning the first part of the fight, the part that wasn't about fists or weapons, but about fear and control. I had taken away their confidence and given them doubt. Now, they were heading toward the front. I would need to move. Move quietly, move fast, and be ready for whatever they tried next. My home felt like a fortress, but a fortress could be breached. I wouldn't let them, not as long as I was standing. The night was far from over. I saw him move, quick and angry, not toward the truck like his friends were probably hoping, but towards the old generator near the porch. His hand grabbed the red plastic can, the one with the fuel for the tractor. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This was different. This wasn't about stealing anymore. He yanked the cap off the can. I could almost smell it from here, that sharp, bad smell of gasoline. My body went cold, completely still. He turned back towards the house, towards the porch, his face hard and mean even in the dim light. The other two looked scared, like they didn't like this new idea. "You think you're some kind of hero, old man?" he snarled, his voice loud now, shaky with anger and something else, something desperate. "Let's see how you handle this." He started tipping the can. I heard the liquid slosh inside, then a steady stream of it hitting the dry wooden boards of the porch. Splash, splash, splash. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trap bird. He was splashing it everywhere, near the front door, along the edge of the house, dangerously close to the walls. The walls of Lily's home. The only home she had ever known. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about getting back at me for scaring them. This was about pure nastiness. About destroying something I loved because they couldn't take what they wanted. The smell of the gasoline was stronger now, even up here. It clawed at the back of my throat. My mind raced faster than it had in years. Every bit of my training screamed at me. Asterisk threat. Neutralize. Fast. Asterisk, but a colder, deeper part of me, the father part, was screaming something else. Asterisk fire. Lily. Asterisk. He was still splashing, emptying the can. The other two were backing away slowly, looking nervous. They didn't want this. This was too much, even for them. The leader didn't care. He was focused only on the house, on the damage he was doing. His eyes looked wild. He was high on his own anger. "You built this quiet life," he yelled, his voice raw. "Think you can just hide away?" He kicked at the wood of the porch, sending a spray of gasoline higher up the wall. The wood was old and dry. It would burn fast, so fast. I imagined the flames, orange and hungry, climbing the walls, reaching for the roof, reaching for Lily's room. The thought was like a punch to the gut. He lowered the now empty can. He reached into his pocket with his free hand. My eyes locked onto that hand. What was he reaching for? A knife? No, he had something else in mind. He had the can of gasoline. He was reaching for something to light it with. A lighter, of course. A cheap plastic lighter. This was the hook. The lighter. The simple, everyday thing that could turn everything into ash. The smell of gasoline filled the air. It was a physical threat, something real and immediate. Much more real than the shadows or the quiet fear. The silence of the night seemed to press in, making the little sounds stand out. His heavy breathing, the nervous shuffling of the other two's feet, the distant sound of crickets that seemed impossibly far away now. My body tensed. Every muscle was ready to move. But how? If I went out there, he might light it before I got to him. If I waited, he would light it. There was no good option, only the one I had to make. The one that kept Lily safe. My eyes flicked towards the stairs, towards her room. She was still asleep, still safe. For now. He pulled the lighter out of his pocket. It was small and red. He held it up, fiddling with the little wheel on top, getting ready to make a spark. "This is what you get for messing with us, old man," he sneered. His eyes met mine for a split second through the window gap. Did he see me? Maybe. Maybe not. It didn't matter. He was going to do it. He was going to light my home on fire. A wave of pure, hot fury washed over me, burning away the cold fear. This was my home. Sarah's dream. Lily's safe place. He wasn't just threatening wood and paint. He was threatening memories. He was threatening the future. The thought of his stupid, mean face watching it burn made my blood boil. The other two were telling him to stop. I could hear their voices now, low and scared. "No, man, don't do it," one of them begged. "Let's just go." The leader ignored them. He was past listening. He had the lighter in his hand, his thumb hovering over the wheel. The fire was moments away. This was the final hook before the action. The moment right before everything changed. The tension was stretched tight, like a wire ready to snap. My mind didn't think about tactics anymore. It didn't think about angles or cover. It thought about fire, about Lily, about stopping him. There was no stealth left, no waiting in shadows. There was only running. Running out there and stopping him before he could make a spark. My hand went to the doorknob. It was cold metal against my palm. I could hear his heavy breathing from outside. Hear the nervous whispers of the other two. Hear the tiny click as his thumb moved the lighter wheel. Getting ready. Ready to make fire. My training said be smart, be careful. But my heart, the heart of a father, didn't care about smart or careful right now. It only cared about protecting what was inside this house. Lily, my little girl. She deserved to wake up safe in her own bed. She deserved to keep her home. This house was a part of her, a part of us. And he was going to take that away with a flick of his thumb. Not on my watch. Not tonight. The smell of gasoline was overwhelming now. It felt like it was filling the house, filling my lungs. I knew I had to move. Right now. Before he could make that spark. Before the flames took hold. Before everything was gone. There was no more time to hide. No more time to wait. He reached for his pocket, probably for a lighter. His thumb was on the little wheel. The smell of gasoline burned my nose. In that second, my body just moved. The doorknob turned. The back door burst open. I didn't sneak out. I exploded out. Get away from my house. I roared. It wasn't a soldier's yell. It was a father's roar. Loud, raw, full of everything I was feeling. He jumped back, startled. His eyes went wide. He fumbled with the lighter in his hand. That fumbling was all the time I needed. In that split second, before he could even think about making a spark, I was on him. Not aiming, not thinking, just moving with pure force. I hit him hard, a low tackle aimed at his legs. We both went down in a tangle of arms and legs on the gasoline-soaked porch. The impact knocked the wind out of him. The lighter flew out of his hand and skittered across the wood. My hands were instantly on him, grabbing, pushing, keeping him away from the lighter, keeping him away from the house. The struggle was messy, not clean like in training. It was dirt, sweat, and the terrible smell of gasoline. He was strong, but I was faster, and I had something he didn't, a reason to fight that was bigger than fear or greed. I was fighting for Lily, for Sarah's memory, for the quiet life we built. He thrashed beneath me, trying to get a clear shot, trying to grab something. I used my weight, my arms, my legs to control him, to keep him pinned down. He grunted, cursed, tried to punch me. I blocked his arm, twisted, kept the pressure on. Every sound of the struggle felt loud in the quiet night. The other two, I heard them yell something, surprised, scared. They weren't joining in. They were backing away. My roar, the suddenness of my attack, had frozen them. Or maybe the gasoline had scared them more than anything. I heard quick footsteps running away from the porch, heading back toward the yard. They were running. Good. Get them away from here. I kept focused on the leader. He was trying to bite me now. Desperate. I shifted my weight, put a knee on his chest, pinning him down tighter. His breath came in ragged gasps. He wasn't fighting as hard anymore. The surprise, the struggle, it had taken the fight out of him, just like the wrench had scared the jumpy one. Then in the distance, a new sound. A siren. Faint at first, but getting louder. I had hit that silent alarm button near the back door on my way out, hoping it would call for help. It had. The sound of the siren seemed to make the leader go limp beneath me. He knew it was over. I didn't need to fight him anymore. I just needed to hold him. I used some baling twine from a pile near the porch. Simple farm stuff, but strong. Quick hands, looping it around his wrists, pulling it tight. Not fancy, but it did the job. He didn't fight me. He just lay there, breathing hard, looking up at the dark sky, nursing what felt like a broken nose. The siren got louder and louder, its red and blue lights flashing through the trees. It pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on the gravel just like the intruder's truck had hours ago. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Sheriff's office. Hands where I could see him. I stood up slowly, careful to keep my hands visible. Sheriff, it's me, Tom. They tried to burn the place. I was shaking now, the adrenaline started to wear off, leaving me feeling weak and shaky. The sheriff, a man I knew, saw me, saw the man tied up on the porch, saw the smell of gasoline. He and another officer moved fast, taking control, checking the porch, checking the tied-up man. Asked if I was okay. Asked if anyone else was here. My daughter, I said, my voice thick. Upstairs. She's safe. Just then, the front door opened slowly. Lily, her eyes wide, looking scared. She must have heard the commotion, the siren. Papa, she whispered. Lilybug. My voice cracked. I ran to her, forgetting the sheriff, the tied-up man, everything. She ran into my arms, her small body trembling. I held her tight, burying my face in her hair, breathing her in. She smelled like sleep and sunshine. Safe. She was safe. looking at her, at the old farmhouse still standing behind her, smelling the gasoline but seeing no flames, a wave of relief washed over me, so strong it almost brought me to my knees. It had been worth it. Every scary second, every old memory pulled back to the surface. The shadows of my past, the skills I thought I'd buried forever, they hadn't been a curse tonight. They had been a shield. They had saved our future. My arms tightened around Lily, holding her close. We were okay. We were home.